What's up, everybody? My name is Josh LaFleur from Late Start Piano. Today, we're going to be talking about why forgetting songs that you learn is actually a good thing. So, this probably has happened to you if you've been playing piano for 6 months or a year or a week, where you play a song, you feel really good about it one day, then you go back the next day, or you go back a week from then, and then you forget 90% of what you had down before. And it might feel frustrating at first. You might be a little pissed off because you could do something and now all of a sudden you can't do it and you don't really know why. And again, you're just kind of frustrated with that process. So today I'm going to be explaining to you why that's actually a good thing, and that you can actually use your forgetfulness to actually turn it into a positive thing that you can actually use to improve your piano playing. So, point number one is if you need to relearn a piece, you are reinforcing it. And when you reinforce something, you're adding it to your long term memory. Same thing as if you are in school and you are cramming for a test the night before, and the night before you study for 8 hours, and then you take the test the next day. Maybe you pass it, maybe you don't. But if you ask you the same questions a week from then, you don't remember any of it because you just crammed it all in the night before and you delete it as soon as you start writing down your answers on the test, right? Now, to compare that, you can also have the good students who will study before the test 3 weeks in advance. So they'll be studying an hour every single day for 3 weeks in a row, and then they take the test. First of all, they're likely to do much better. Their scores will be higher, and they are much more likely to retain what they learned in the future. So in that same example, they take the same test on the same day that you do, 3 weeks from that day. They are much more likely to remember all of the answers and actually remember what they had learned for the test. Same thing when learning the piano. If you are cramming and you play for hours and hours and you remember the piece for that one day, then when you go back a week later, if you haven't practiced it at all, you might not remember it. And so, what you want to do instead, or if that does happen to you where you forget it, you can relearn it. And when you relearn the piece, you go back, you pull up the sheet music, you try to figure out the correct fingers to be used again. You are reinforcing what you learned, and it's going to be much more likely to be added and remembered by your long term memory. So that way, in the future, you might not have to practice that piece every single day because you already did the work, but you can still remember it weeks or months after the last time you played it, just because it's now actually a thing in your long term memory, right? So that's actually one of the good things about forgetting pieces. Point number two is, or yeah, well, you can also add a deeper expression to your music as well. So a lot of times, what people do, especially newer piano players, is they will learn a piece, they will rush through it, and they can play the notes. So they can play what's under their fingers, they can play the correct notes, they can play it at the correct tempo, even so it sounds good, but they will neglect the expression. So things like articulation, things like dynamics, things like tempo changes, right? So slowing down, speeding up during the piece, things like that is all part of the expression umbrella. And dynamics being a big piece of that, maybe the most important piece of expression is dynamics. Dynamics, all that means is the volume that you're playing at. So is it forte? Is it loud? Is it piano, which means quiet? Is it somewhere in between that? Are there dynamic changes? So you're supposed to be a diminuendo where you slow down, or you not slow down, but you play quieter, or a crescendo where you play louder, right? All of those things affect the way that you are playing. They affect the way that people understand and interpret what you're playing, and they change if you're playing really well versus just you're playing well, right? So that's a big piece. Even if you can play a song with, again, at the correct tempo all the way through, you can play the right notes, you can play it smoothly, all that stuff. If you don't have the expression piece down, then it's not going to sound at that professional level. And the expression is a big piece. It's how you convey the emotions of what you're playing. It's how people will receive whatever that you're trying to express to them, right? Because the music is all about expressing emotion. It's a big piece of it. And if you don't have these expressions, you don't have the dynamics in your playing, then it's very hard for you to actually push out what you are trying to say with your emotions. And therefore, it will be hard for the people in the audience to receive and understand what it is that you're trying to make them feel. So you can go back, even if you forget it, relearn it. Point number one. Point number two, focus on the expressions, focus on the dynamics. And it's a small thing, and it gets neglected because you don't really need it, because if you can play the song, then you can play the song. People recognize what you're playing. It still sounds good, right? You feel like you're done. But if you want to go that extra step, that you're at 80% or 90%, and then you want to go to 95% of that song, then you need to add the expression and need to add the dynamics to make sure that what you're playing is the best that you can possibly do. So big thing. Next point is you can also look at the theory and the structure side. So again, point number one, you can reinforce it to your long-term memory. Point number two, you can work on expression dynamics. Point number three is when you have to relearn a song, you can look at the structure of it and you can look at the music theory side of it. So what do I mean? You can look at the structure as in things like what notes are in the melody, what notes are in the left hand, the chord pieces, what are the chords, what key is it in? And if you actually take a moment to think about these things, and especially if you're already working on your technique and you're already working on your music theory abilities and knowledge by doing things like scales, then again, you're going to reinforce that knowledge within you so that next time you have a song that's in the key of F major, for example, it'll be that much easier for you to play because you're already familiar with F major. You're already familiar with the chords that are in F major. You're familiar with how to finger those chords. You're familiar with melody notes that go good with F major, right? All of those kinds of things. Arpeggios, a lot of broken chords in music, and if you know how to play those in a specific key, then it's going to be much easier down the road. It also just helps with your knowledge as well. So all those things I just said are physical, right? Knowing that you can play the scale, knowing that you can play the chords, you can use the right fingers, all of that stuff is great. But it also helps with your knowledge as well, your theory side of it. So you can actually understand why it sounds good. Not just that you can physically play it, but you also understand why. You understand why a C7 flows very nicely into an F major chord, right? Because C7 is the dominant of F major. And all of those things can help you understand, again, why it sounds so good, why certain chords sound the way that they do, and why melodies go good together. So it'll help you just to know that in the future. You will be able to understand what it is that you're hearing when music comes up. And if you ever want to improvise or you ever want to write your own music, then you should probably understand a little bit of music theory so that you have some kind of place to at least start from. Unless you're Paul McCartney or John Lennon, then you don't need music theory. But other than that, it's always a good idea to at least learn the basics. Like I said, the notes within a specific scale and the chords that are in that scale, and then how to play it and how to finger each of those, right? All of those things are really helpful. So next time you forget a song, it's not a big deal that you have to relearn it. It's actually a good thing for all those three reasons I just said. Helps your long-term memory. You can go back, rework the expression and the dynamics, and that also helps your music theory side as well. So don't get discouraged next time that you forget a piece. Just remember those three things I just told you. Just to finish up here, I do have a free guide on my website. It's 34 essential tips for the new piano player to start learning the piano as fast as possible. To get that, link is down below. It's completely free. In addition, I am offering lessons right now via Zoom. To get started with those, send me an email. That is down below as well. We'll set up a day and a time that works best for you. Happy practicing. My name is Josh LaFleur with Late Start Piano.